Hello and welcome to DynaLearn. This video is about understanding carbon emissions. It focuses particularly on identifying system components, which becomes possible from Learning Space 1 onward. Learners typically misunderstand how global carbon emissions have to change in order for atmospheric carbon dioxide to stabilize. The learning goal of this video is identify the components that play a role in a system. So how does DynaLearn help you to achieve this goal? Learning Space 1 is the first modeling environment that learners encounter when they start using DynaLearn. It serves as an introduction to conceptual modeling and for that reason is as simple as possible. Learning Space 1 has only two types of ingredients, concepts and relations, which we will explain soon. The goal is that a model developed in Learning Space 1 has an easy to understand representation because it is close to human thinking. Such a model is an external representation, so it's easy to think about particular components within the system without having to remember the others. And it's a two-dimensional graphical representation, which makes it possible to scan the representation and easily talk about it with others. The concept and relation representation in Learning Space 1 is equivalent to so-called concept maps, which are an established form of representation within education. An important thing to note about Learning Space 1 is that it is the only learning space that does not allow for simulation. So what are these concepts and relations? A concept can represent any notion except relations. They can represent particular objects, such as a coffee cup, an organism, such as a plant, a property of an organism, such as the height of the plant, or even generic concepts, such as plants or liquids in general. Relations are used to link different concepts and can represent spatial relations, such as the coffee cup is underneath the tap, mereological relations, such as the handle is part of the coffee cup, ontological relations, such as water is a liquid. They can relate properties to objects, such as water has a height, and they can even represent causal relations, such as water flow increases the amount of water in the coffee cup. So let's see how we can model concepts and relations in DynaLearn. This model is about carbon emissions. So the first thing that I will model is the carbon dioxide. To add carbon dioxide as a concept, I press the Add Concept button and I will name this concept carbon dioxide. I want to indicate that this carbon dioxide is contained in the atmosphere, so I will model the atmosphere. So again, I will press the Add Concept button, I will name it atmosphere, and I will press Apply Changes. So now I have carbon dioxide and I have atmosphere. And I want to indicate that the atmosphere contains carbon dioxide. I will represent this information using a relation. To add a relation, I select atmosphere, then I shift click on carbon dioxide, and then the Add Relation button becomes active. I press this button and I will call this relation contains. So now I have carbon dioxide contains atmosphere. This is not what I want. I want these arguments to be the other way around. So I click the Switch Arguments button and now I have atmosphere contains carbon dioxide. Then I press Apply Changes and the relation appears. Since this model is about emissions, I want to represent the global population which emits this carbon dioxide. So I will add the global population as a concept. And I will use a relation to indicate that the global population emits carbon dioxide. So now I have to press the Add New Relation button to create a new relation, and I will call it emits. And it's again in the wrong direction. Carbon dioxide emits global population is not what I want. I press the Switch Arguments button, and now I have global population emits carbon dioxide. What I actually want to represent are the emissions of the global population. And I will call this concept carbon emissions. And I want to indicate that these carbon emissions are of the global population. And I will represent this using a relation. So I'll select both, create a new relation, call it of, and I want to say carbon emissions of global population. I don't just want to talk about the carbon dioxide in general, but I want to talk particularly about the amount of carbon dioxide because the carbon emissions increase this amount of carbon dioxide. So for that reason, I will model the amount of carbon dioxide as a concept. So I will add a new concept, call it amount, place it beneath carbon dioxide, And I will use this relation of to indicate that this amount represents the amount of carbon dioxide. So select amount and carbon dioxide, press the add relation button, select of, and the order should be amount of carbon dioxide. Now I want to indicate this relation between carbon emissions and the amount of carbon dioxide. Particularly, I want to indicate that the carbon emissions increases the amount of carbon dioxide. And again, I will do this using a relation. So I select carbon emissions, I select amount, select add relation, create a new relation called increases. And now I have carbon emissions increases amount. I press apply changes. And now I've indicated that the carbon emissions increase the amount of carbon dioxide. Actually, I want to call this relation increase, so I double click on it and remove the S, press apply changes again, and now it is correct. I also want to indicate the reasons that the atmospheric carbon dioxide decreases. So I will model the plant population which absorbs the carbon dioxide. So first I will model the plants. So I will call this plant population. And I will say that the plant population absorbs carbon dioxide. And it does this through photosynthesis. So I will add photosynthesis as a concept. And it is the photosynthesis of the plant population. And this photosynthesis decreases the amount of carbon dioxide. So I will create a new relation, decreases. So with this, I've developed a small little model about carbon emissions that identifies each of the important components within the system. So, to conclude, DynaLearn enables you to identify components of a system by modeling them as concepts and relations. Concepts can represent any notion except relations, while relations represent links between concepts. In the next video, we will move to Learning Space 2 and distinguish between the structure of a system and its behavior. This distinction provides a more refined way to identify the components of a system and is the first step towards really understanding the system.